All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We're coming up 10:30 Eastern time, so we'll get started here in just a minute. I can see other people joining at the moment, so I'll wait another couple of minutes just to allow other people to join. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay, and we'll get into it here in just a minute. All right, so already a couple of minutes past, so that's okay. We can get into it as of now. Sounds good. And we're going to try something a bit different this time. I'm going to share my webcam at first starting here, which is kind of weird for me. But yeah, wanted to be able to see everybody. Well, I can't see you, but you can see me. Just to be able to put a face to a name and also a face to a voice, I guess, there as well. So thank you everyone for joining us here again today for yet another webinar here from Cireson. What we're going to do is, this one's entitled First Look at Service Manager 2019. I've spotted a spelling mistake on the front there. Look at that. What's new? And what does it mean for you? My name is Brett Moffat. I'm a solutions architect for Cireson. I've been here with Cireson for 4 years, and I try and host a webinar whenever we can, whenever we've got something interesting to talk about, and hopefully this topic is of interest to you. I'm being joined by Joyvan Hedrick, Cireson Services Consultant out of Japan. Hello, Joyvan.
Hello, Brett. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. Is it getting warmer there in Japan?
Yes, it's near perfect weather, but then every now and then you get some random storms that appear halfway through the day. So it's hit or miss, but much better than probably you're faring right now.
It's getting colder down here, that's for sure. That's for sure. All right, cool. So we're going to get into this webinar. I'm just going to go through some of the sort of the high level stuff around System Center or Service Manager 2019, and then I'm going to have Joyvan do a demo of some of the ways that you can start to look to upgrade from a previous version of Service Manager up to Service Manager 2019. And then we've got a special announcement at the end of this for everyone that attends the webinar. So thank you so much everyone for joining. We've got a great turnout at the moment, so that's awesome. So let's get into it. You've probably seen enough of me, so we can just get back straight to the PowerPoint. For those of you that haven't or don't know Cireson or haven't heard about us, Cireson was formed in 2012. We have about 1,200, much more than 1,200 customers worldwide now. We probably need to update the number of these. Our customer base keeps growing. We're in 65 countries worldwide, and we actually started as a consulting company. And once we actually got into consulting around Service Manager, we realized how we could expand and enhance Service Manager to get the most out of the product and the licensing that people are already paying for it. So that really reflects in the amount of consulting hours that we have and experience right across the company. That number keeps growing daily. And the depth of experience that we have with our consulting staff really reflects into the products that we try and create as being as good as possible. And with fantastic customers like are on the call here at the moment, we're really happy to have that a 95% renewal rate with our customers. And hopefully that's because A, it's a good product, but also that you get the kind of resources like these webinars to be able to see a path forward with the product, and also to get the most out of the products that you've already invested in. So Cireson really starts to merge those two between System Center Service Manager and Configuration Manager there. All of our products sit in the middle to be able to really enhance what Service Manager can do and really leverage your Config Manager investment that you've already had. If you want to talk about any of these components in here, whether it be remote management or asset management or anything to do with service management whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to me. Always happy to have a chat about anything, even if it's not directly about our products, just something about IT service management or ITIL in general. Always happy to have a chat about that and talk about other experiences of other companies, maybe in your industry as well. So always feel free to reach out to me and have a chat about just about anything that we do. So today's topic is going to be around Service Manager 2019, and we're going to start with a couple of questions that we're going to have here with a poll that I'm going to launch to actually be a bit more interactive this time around. Now, any questions that you answer here, nobody else on the call will actually see any of that information. We'll only see the aggregate result at the end of it. So the first question I want to be able to sort of put out to everyone there is, what version of Service Manager are you currently running? Hopefully you should see a poll appear on your screen there. If you vote on that, it would be interesting to see how many people out there are running what version of Service Manager. Looks like the majority of you are running 2016, which is cool, but a lot running 2012 as well. All right, interesting. Give it another 30 seconds to just see if everyone's had a chance to vote. All right, so bring up. Now I'm not sure if I can see audience view, what you guys can see. There we go. All right, 80% voted. Yeah, that's right. We'll go with 80%. That's cool. We should now, can I share those results here? There we go. Look at that. Awesome. So it really shows that the majority of people are already on 2016. So we've made the jump between 2012 and 2016. And then if you're now looking to make that jump to 2019. So if you're still on 2012 R2, that's fine, not a problem. We're going to get into that and show you that the migration path or the upgrade path from 2012 to 2019 is just as easy and just as simple as 2016 up to 2019 as well. There's a few gotchas that we've got to be aware of, but we can certainly help you out with that as well. Cool. So Service Manager 2019, what we're going to have a look at also is where Cireson is at the moment with our compatibility with Service Manager 2019. Then we're going to have a look at discussing the difference between migration from maybe 2012 or 2016 up to 2019, or just an in-place upgrade. What are the sorts of things we need to think about? What are the considerations we need to bring into things? Then we're going to look at best practices of actually getting that done. And then how Cireson can help at the end. That's where we're going to step into a demo of our tools that you can use for this, specifically the Lifecycle Management App, that if you've got Team Edition or the Business Management Solution, you would already have the Lifecycle Management App as part of it, how that can help, how it works, all those sorts of things. If you do have any questions as we go through, the GoToWebinar control panel should actually have an area there that you can ask questions. Please feel free to ask questions. I'll try and answer them as we go along. If not, I'll try and answer them at the end. And if I don't have an answer for you, I'll get back to you directly one-on-one after the webinar. All right, so let's get into actually talking about this agenda. So what's new in Service Manager 2019? I'd like to say there's a big long list of things that Microsoft has added in here, but really the four main components are the UI responsiveness of the original console, the AD connector improvements allowing you to do some cross-domain AD connection differences, which is really cool. So if you were struggling with some of those particular issues with AD connector, they have improved and replaced that AD connector with a better one, which is good. If you're having no problems with your AD connector as it is at the moment, then it's not going to impact you in a large way. They've also added support for TLS 1.2, so SSL certificates and so forth, the security of the web browsers and connection into the database. So it's really an upgrade in the security and keeping the product up to date with current standards. And they've also added support for SQL 2017. So the one question that I get quite often is there also support for SQL 2019? Now, technically it does work, but it's not officially supported by Microsoft. So at this point in time, I would, if you are looking to upgrade SQL while you're upgrading Service Manager, I would avoid 2019 at this stage, just to keep you out of issues with supportability with Microsoft. So just some advice there on, keeping that version correct. That's about it for what's new in Service Manager, but of course, if you're going over to Service Manager 2019, you want to make sure that everything else is going to be supported there with you. So I'm happy to be able to say that all the Cireson apps are compatible with Service Manager 2019. And of course, anything in the supported versions of the Cireson portal are also supported on 2019 as well. So 8.x and 9.x are the two supported versions of the portal at the moment. If you're not on a current version of the portal, maybe on version 7 or even version 6, please reach out, drop me a note, and we can organise to have support assist you with getting that up to a supported version. All right, so if you are looking to get to Service Manager 2019, there's a couple of things that we need to look at when it comes to either a migration to a new environment or upgrading your existing environment. Now, I can see from the list of people that are on this call, some of you have already done that migration from 2012 to 2016. If you've already done that cleanup from 2012 to 2016 and you've got a fairly nice looking 2016 environment, the answer is pretty simple, and that's just run the upgrade and you're off and away. For those of you that either started out with 2016 as a fresh install when you first installed Service Manager, or you're on 2012 R2, there's a couple of decisions you have to make as to whether or not you're going to upgrade or migrate your environments. The number one decision about whether you should upgrade or migrate is that reporting and data retention. How important is the reporting of the information that's in the data warehouse to you and your organization. Lots of people think that the data sits inside Service Manager until the grooming time, the retention period of those work items elapses, and then Service Manager copies the data from Service Manager over to the data warehouse. And that's not quite accurate. What actually happens is when you create a work item, it actually creates it inside Service Manager, and it also copies it over to the data warehouse straight away. So that data is there and available for reporting live as you're going through it. Now, yes, it does take, there is a minor delay in there while it does its extract, transform, and load jobs, that the data warehouse jobs that are actually running there. But more or less, that information there is live. Now, why is that important? Well, if you're reporting, if you need to report only back 1 year, and you've got your retention set to 1 year, but you've got your data warehouse set to 10 years maybe, you can safely turn off your data warehouse, delete it, and then rebuild it, and it will copy the 1 year worth of data that's currently sitting in your Service Manager database. So you will always have that 1 year worth of reporting. Yeah, you won't have before that, but you will have that. So if there is, if you only need to report on the data going back 1 year, and I'd suggest that if you're reporting back any further than 1 year in your Service Manager environment, for things like performance and trends and those sorts of things, the data is probably a bit redundant and a bit too old once it gets past 1 year. If you've got regulations, for example, by regulators or government or some sort of standards that you have to comply with, that you have to retain that data for longer, then the data warehouse database can stay there and be kept in an offline mode. So it is there for reporting if you needed to, and then you can rebuild your new database. So trying to make that determination is very important. What we do have is, if I go over to here and I have a look at our Cireson website, I actually wrote a blog article a little while ago, the migration, SCSM 2019, migration or upgrade, 3 choices to consider. This goes into a lot more detail about that. So I encourage you, if you are having that debate internally about your data warehouse, have a read through this. It goes into a lot more detail, so we won't spend any more time on this during the webinar. You can always get to our blog articles by going to cireson.com, going to resources and blogs there as well. So lots of cool blogs there from Cireson employees. So wherever possible, my suggestion is to migrate rather than upgrade. That gives you a much easier way of doing risk and rollback plan, because that old system doesn't get turned off until you're absolutely happy that that migration is working and perfectly functional. And then, so you're really, really reducing that risk, and you're not having to, if you do need to roll back something, it's literally just telling your analysts to look at a different console of that. Downtime is another huge one there as well. Again, with that, with a migration, you don't have any downtime, because you can have those 2 environments sitting side by side, and even midday, halfway through a day, you can tell people, okay, we're now logging on to 2019 instead of 2016 or 2012, and there we are, we can get going. If you try and do an upgrade, you are going to have some downtime, because the servers, the live servers, have to be impacted. So all of that upgrade will have to be done after hours. If you do an upgrade, you also don't really get the opportunity, or it's a little bit harder to have the opportunity to refresh your servers, your OS, your SQL version, so forth. The migration allows you to be able to get over to a new standard operating environment image, or maybe go from physical hardware to virtual hardware. Makes it much easier to be able to achieve that as well, and upgrading, of course, SQL and OS during that period. During a migration, you also get a great opportunity to be able to clean up Service Manager in general. Now, I know some of the people on the call here have already done that between 2012 and 2016. It really does give you that opportunity to undo mistakes of the past and go back to look at best practice to really slim up our Service Manager environment and get the best performance out of the product we can. So definitely a few things there to think about when doing the migration or versus upgrade. Certainly it is our advice to people to do a migration plan instead. It does have a lot of things going for it, especially the lack of risk and the lack of downtime. All right, so how can the Lifecycle Management App actually help in that migration? Well, the Lifecycle Management App was originally created to help with copying one environment to another. So a great way of being able to copy large amounts of the data from one environment to another. Now that can be from a 2012 R2, 2016, over to a 2019, or it can be between versions or even between the same versions. So a great way to even populate a dev or test environment as well. So the Lifecycle Management App is great for being able to do that. It does give you that opportunity to clean house, as I said, or even completely start again. There may be certain things that you want to be able to do to be able to wipe everything out and build the whole thing from scratch, and then just migrate over your configuration items and work items as part of that as well. And again, the most important thing that Lifecycle Management App brings is that fact that we can do zero downtime with that migration. So this is where I stop talking and we actually see some of the impressive work. So I'm going to pass over to Joy Van here. I need to click a few buttons here in the background. If I go make presenter, this will switch over to Joy Van, and he can actually take us through having a look at the Lifecycle Management App and what that process would actually look like in migrating from a previous version of Service Manager into 2019.
Awesome, thank you, Brett. And give me 1 sec to actually.
I sent you the wrong presenter.
That's not a problem. And we'll hit yes on that one.
Here we go.
And you should hopefully see something.
Yep, can see that perfectly.
Yeah, perfect. So what I'm going to show is a really easy way to transfer or copy a bunch of stuff, pretty much everything, from one environment to another, in terms of just migrating your environment from either 2012 or 2016 up to 2019. Starting with some best practices, some initial steps that you'll want to do, just in general for all environments, whether it's a migration or a brand new environment, setting up a brand new dev or a test or QA environment. And it'll help you both initially with the environment and then going forward, getting rid of a bunch of headaches that you might see later on if you don't do these really just easy initial steps. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is a brand new environment. When you first install it, it will have a few different MPs installed. And we'll jump over here. And if we take a look at our management packs, I don't have very many, just the default number plus or minus a couple. But then I'll normally also have a bunch of out-of-box management packs with some unsealed list values, unsealed views, items that we don't necessarily want, some request offerings. And it's kind of hard to know exactly what all you need to do when you first create an environment. But fortunately, one of our other consultants has created a blog Jeff Ross about all of the out-of-box items that you can go through and delete. And then that means anything that you create, you'll either be forced to pick a new management pack for, or just let the Lifecycle Management App auto-create a management pack for it, or copy it over from the source environment without having to worry about going forward which MP you'll be editing, either the current out-of-box one, or the one that LMA migrated, or a brand new one. It can get kind of confusing unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So I do want to highlight a couple things. It talks about some request offering MPs that you can get rid of, or some request offerings within some MPs that you can get rid of, some views that you can get rid of, some templates, and some lists. And essentially you just want to go through and delete all of those. And it's got some really pretty screenshots. So definitely check out this blog when you get a chance. And after you do all of this stuff to your brand new environment, before you take a look at migrating, or before you take a look at the Lifecycle Management App, you will also want to create your connectors. This just makes sure that everything is set up initially, and that any migrations that you do has a lot less work to do. It doesn't have to migrate any of your users, any of your groups, which it absolutely can do, but it'll take it a little bit more time if you don't do that beforehand. So you do have an option, but this is definitely recommended. So before or after you set up your connectors, then you are ready to get started, and you can open up the Lifecycle Management App and start to migrate all of your items over. You do have to do a little bit of planning. For example, say your old environment is kind of messy. You have a 2016 or 2012 environment that you want to migrate over, and it's kind of old. Maybe the initial admin that set it up didn't do things correctly. And so you don't really want an exact copy of all of your management packs. You might have to go through a couple of them and rearrange them or move them manually. But Lifecycle Management App is pretty good about letting you know which MPs have a problem. For example, if you have some dependencies on some out-of-box management packs, it doesn't necessarily let you just import those over, which is good, because if you have trash in your old environment, you definitely do not want trash in the new environment. So let's take a quick look at what it looks like for copying over some management packs. And actually what we'll do, we have a copy here on our desktop of our client machine. So we're looking at just a normal Windows 10 machine. And when we open it up, our account that we're using, it's an admin account, so it has access to both the source environment and the targets environment. For now, we're going to switch this to this SCSM 05, which is our brand new environment with nothing really in it. And we will start with management packs. And the best approach is to go management packs first, along with all the settings, some files, some DLL files for any custom workflows that you may have, template changes, and then we can look at the other items later. We'll hit options here, and we get a few different options. You'll potentially want to run all of these, but we're mostly interested in our management packs. So for now, we'll just uncheck all of these and come back to that momentarily. And it has some smart importing options so that it will first import the sealed ones, but do it in a dependency order, because oftentimes you have sealed management packs that depend on other sealed management packs that depend on other sealed management packs. So it sorts out all of that for you, which will save you hours if you want to do that manually, especially if you have something like non-Windows computers that you want to import, and the dependency chain for any of the Linux MPs, if any of you have dealt with it, is horrendous. There's only maybe 15 MPs, but it takes a while to track them all down and grab them, and this just handles it for you. Let's go ahead and hit next. And currently in our target environment, we have 0 MPs, or at least we should have near 0 MPs. And so it starts out with grabbing all of our sealed MPs. It's got 99 sealed MPs and a lot more unsealed ones. This would normally take a while to complete, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, depending on the entire number of both sealed and unsealed MPs, as well as the speeds of both environments. My lab is a little bit slow, but your environments would probably be a little bit faster. We're going ahead and cancel that for now. And then let's take a look at what happens when we have an environment that already has most of the MPs copied over. So for example, let's say that you want to upgrade your 2016 environment to 2019, but you're planning a go live date. And so your production is still 2016, except you want to still be able to work in it and then have a cutover time, essentially the no downtime point that Brett was talking about earlier. You want to keep it up to date, and then at exactly 8 a.m. On Thursday morning, you want to be able to code over and have everything be completely up to date. LMA can absolutely assist with that. If you, let's go ahead and change this to SCSM2. Run this at any time, and then just have it pretty much do the exact same settings. And then have it update. It will verify all of the MPs. It will check to see if any of the items have changed. So let's go ahead and view the source log on that. And actually what we'll do is, do we have, yep, add plus play, yeah, we do. Oof. Scared me, thought I didn't have that on here for a sec. And you'll see that it went through and grabbed all of the potential management packs from the source server. It saw that we already have all of them for both sealed and unsealed, except one of them had a change in the source environment. If we take a look at this, oops. You'll see that it found it, and it's got a different, it's got a same version, but it has a different last modified date because the source server is newer and the target server is older. And so it knows to migrate only that one of several hundred MPs. So this will save lots of time for a really easy migration, and you can run it over and over again and know that it will always work. Unless there's an underlying problem with one of your MPs, or you know ahead of time that you need to modify it, then it will completely migrate all of your MPs over, including all of your list values, your templates, your views, without having to do anything special.
So you don't have to set up a change freeze window for your production server while you're getting your new production server up and running. So if you do make a change to a list, or you do make a change to a notification, something like that, it doesn't matter. You just rerun this and it will automatically detect that for you and copy that information across to your new environment, which is very cool.
Yes, yep, absolutely. And it does a few other really nice things as well. So it does use 100% SDK. So there's no weird SQL edits. There's nothing non-supported about it. It's all SDK, so it's all supported by Microsoft. And so you don't have to worry about if it makes any changes that might break the system, which is really nice. Everything's going to be contained in either an MP, a work item, a config item, or an entity object, something native to Service Manager without having to do anything special. If we then undo all of these and then check any of these other ones, it will do some really nice special items. Sometimes you might have a lot of settings. This is anything that's going to be in your admin settings. In particular, if we take a look at our, let's take a look at this one, our source server. Sometimes some of these settings, they might be easy, like some of your incident settings might take 1 or 2 minutes to manually edit. But if you have something like portal group mappings and you create a brand new environment, then this might take a very long time to remap, especially if you have dozens of groups across multiple work item class types. It does all of that for you in a number of seconds. So very easy to just let it take care of that for you, and then you can rerun it multiple times as time goes on, and it'll update it for you. Templates, runbook templates. Normally when you create a new environment with a new Scorch connector, even if it's pointing at the same Scorch environment, it will break all of your templates because the internal GUIDs don't match. And so you'd have to either manually go in and change all of the template GUIDs, or try to do something like some PowerShell or something else. This takes care of that for you. It also relates all of your request offerings to your service offerings. Those aren't really stored in an MP. Those are stored in each specific environment. But if you have 100, 200, 300 different mappings, it takes care of all that for you, and then it also copies all of your DLL files. You can still run any of these at any time, grabbing from the source server to the target server, making sure that all of your environments, or both of your environments, are up to date and ready for go live. After all of our MPs and settings are completed, we can take a look at config items. Most of these will be brought in by the connector, but some items, usually business services, usually any of your Cireson asset management items, but also any of your custom config item classes can be brought in. And if we take a look, we'll hit the options button, you can then migrate any of the classes, either all Cireson asset class items or a specific class, and then just have that migrate over to the target environment. So if we take a look, actually, we can optionally update as well, have it overwrite, or only create new items. In our source environment, we should have a few business services. In our target environment, I believe we have 0, which is perfect. So we will go ahead and copy these. Let me make sure it's on, yep, 0, 2. And config item copies are usually pretty quick. So you get some pretty instant feedback most of the time. And within a few seconds, we will be able to see that we now have a couple hundred business services on the target environment. So as it's committing, you can come in and see those. Just hit refresh, and you see a bunch of business services. And LMA does handle complex relationships as well. If any of you have used business services, you could just set some simple relationships like the service owner form. There we go. Or if you have any specific service components with the business service, you've got a lot of nested relationships. This one's probably a bad example. Do we have one that is better? I know I have one that's called like alpha something. And it handles all of these fairly easily. And it also gives you the option to create any CIs that don't exist on the target environment yet. So if we take a look at LMA and go back to the config item configuration page, we have the option to create any related items, which makes it really, really easy. If you have a user, for example, that you did not want to migrate, or you did not migrate from the source to the target because they no longer exist, but you still want to actually migrate them because they have some relationships to something that you didn't know about, this takes care of that for you. So it's got a lot of just really simple little things that you don't quite have to think about for migration. It kind of puts it in easy mode, which is really nice. After all of your config items have been migrated, you can then migrate your work items. And this section usually takes a while. Most environments have a large number of work items. And if we take a look at our options, the page looks a little bit different because you'll often want to do these in batches. And if you're trying to do a go live, push the new production, push the new 2019 environment for go live, you'll definitely want to do these in batches so that on the last day or last moment before the cutoff, you can come in and change any of the work item criteria to be created within 0 and 1 day or 0 and 0 days, which means today in this case, and only grab items that are created or modified today, probably modified for a cutover created for the initial batches that you start creating. And then we'll probably want to create work items or create and update work items here, which means either create brand new work items in the target environment, or if it matches any existing work items, go ahead and just update them. So we will go ahead and do that.
So while this is running, Joyvan, the idea of being able to move this into, as you said, batches and so forth, what is the impact of if I just collect all work items and hit go, and I've got, I don't know, 1 million work items in my environment, what's the impact on the current production environment when it comes to database access speed and so forth?
That's an excellent question. So on the source environment, the current production environment, you will see an impact, but it won't be overwhelming on the source environment. Since it is all SDK, it does actually kind of limit the maximum number of requests that are coming in. So it won't completely kill your server, but it'll treat it as if it's being hammered by several hundred users at the same time, which isn't terrible, but it's kind of terrible.
So it's wise to do that very first one when you're doing that first initial. Okay, let's get historically all the work items and all configuration items from the old environment to the new environment. You say that it's best to do that first migration out of hours?
You could do it out of hours, or you could kind of do it in batches in smaller chunks, say maybe only 5,000, 10,000 work items at a time. But if you're still concerned about speed and you want to decrease the speed or decrease how much resources the app takes up, you could uncheck the multi-threading checkbox. This is not my favorite checkbox, but some people seem to like it for some reason where they want things to go slower, which is not my forte, but it's there if you do want to run it during production hours for large numbers of work items. But otherwise, yes, if you're looking for faster copies, then absolutely keep this checked. And if you're looking for very little impact on production or the target server, then yes, definitely out of hours or off hours is definitely recommended.
And thank you, Ralph, for that question. That was a question from one of the attendees. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That's wonderful, thank you. Right. And then if we take a look now, so we just copied a couple dozen work items, and this does a couple things as well. So it copied the work items, and then one question is, what about all of the relationships? It copies the relationships, but what about special relationships like SLOs? So those are a little bit tricky, but it does them perfectly. And the way that it does them is it takes the existing SLOs on the target environment. So if we take a look, these SLOs were previously copied over in the initial management packs and settings phase of LMA. And so when you copy the SLOs, it doesn't actually apply them to any tickets until the tickets are created. And so after you copy over the SLOs, after LMA creates the tickets, it will then reevaluate all of the tickets as they get created and apply new SLOs, or rather the existing current SLOs, to the dates on any of those work items. So you'll still end up with the exact same SLOs, the exact same statuses, except it'll be in the new target environment instead of the old source environment, which is exactly what you want. The caveat to that is it does take up a little bit of resources on the target server. For example, if you do copy over 10,000 work items, it will have to run 10,000 instances of the SLO, which is by design. And that will slow down the target server. It has no impact on the source server at all, but you will see your CPU usage spike a little bit on the target server for a while, depending on the number of work items that you've copied over. But it does correctly relate all of the SLOs, and it does remember them as you copy over either existing work items and update them, and change any of the fields, any of the dates that depend on the criteria of the SLOs, or make no changes, and it will not apply new SLOs as desired. And then after you finish copying over all of your work items, going to production or doing a go live is really simple. Just on the target date, you'll want to sketch that before you go live, you do want to verify the data. Just pick a handful of items, a handful of work items and config items. Make sure that they all match correctly. Make sure that there's no odd discrepancies, which sometimes do occur depending on some of your migration settings. For example, some of your enumeration values, you have a few options that you can play with there. Assuming everything looks good, and you do change or make any changes for anything that looks amiss, then during or just before go live, you do want to rerun config and work items and make sure that you have the absolute latest batch of items up to date in your prod environment, and then switch over. Switching over is usually near instantaneous. For the Cireson portal, for example, you would just make potentially some DNS changes, changing whatever URL that you're using to point to the new server, possibly changing some IIS stuff, adding a new cert if you haven't done that already, and then just let it go for the most part. Any questions on anything around LMA or migrating to SCSM 2019? So one common question is, if you are on 2012, can you migrate directly to 2019? Yes, you can absolutely bypass 2016 and go from 2012 to 2019.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Joyvan. I think that really shows there as well how we can go from one environment to another without any downtime, which is absolutely fantastic. One of the questions, we've got a question coming in here. Hang on a sec. How is the authoring tool used to change when upgrading from Service Manager 2012 to 2016 or 2019? How is the authoring tool used to change the .NET version to 4.5? Now, Jovan, I'll let you answer this one.
Yep, certainly. So going from 2012 to either 2016 or 2019, the .NET version does indeed change. It does not change that at all. That would be a very programmatic change within the UI, within the DLL that's with that MP. However, there are some kind of nifty changes that you can do. It is possible to have 2016 or 2019 run your .NET 3.5 workflows as compared to 4.5. However, any of your GUI changes, which was the main change from 2012 to 2016 or 2019, will break. So if you have a form that's based on a 2012 DLL, or I'm sorry, a 3.5 DLL, it will still be broken in 2016 or 2019, and you need to modify the form. It does still migrate and copy over the management pack to 2016 or 2019, but when you open it up, it will indeed fail.
So the LMA is just going to copy the old 3.51 over, and that will cause those problems, as you just said. So instead, what you're going to have to do, if you have made form changes in the console of Service Manager, say in 2012, you're going to have to open those management packs in the new authoring tool, 2016 or 2019 authoring tool, that is in that version of .NET, and then resave those in the newer version. Are there any gotchas that you're aware of? I mean, that's a very manual thing that we have to do. LMA won't do that by default, won't do that automatically. So you have to manually do that. Joyvan, have you ever seen any sort of gotchas in doing that?
Negative. It's fairly straightforward. Once you migrate it to 2016 or 2019, you'll know it's broken because you'll open up the form and the form just won't open. Worst case scenario, you can just remove that MP with the form and it'll work with the out-of-box form, which is never really the desired behavior. But then, yes, as soon as you then import a new form MP, it will just take over and start working properly again. So it's pretty cut and dry. It either completely works or it doesn't work at all.
Okay. And will LMA notify us which management packs have .NET 3.5 stuff in it, or will it just copy it regardless?
Negative. It will just copy it regardless without notifying. I do have that on the to-do list, but it has not been addressed. Yes.
Cool, not a problem. I think I think the correct answer to this question in the long form is the fact that don't make any changes to the forms inside the console. Don't use the console. You should be using the Cireson portal, web portal to interface for analysts. But I'm just saying that because, well, I'm Cireson, aren't I? The easy changes that can be made to forms on the Cireson portal are much easier than having to use the authoring toolkit for forms, and certainly whilst the speed of the console has improved with 2019, it's still nowhere near as fast as the Cireson portal for being able to use analyst information there as well. And that goes for the free community version of the analyst portal as well. Much faster than the console out of the box for sure. Any other questions from anyone? Feel free to answer some questions here. Here's another question. So what's the suggested action method in this regards? I mean, LMA will import all management packs regardless. So yeah, the best way to deal with those management packs is, first of all, if you know that those management packs have been originally edited in 3.5, depending, as Jovan said, depending on the changes that have been made in there, if they're workflows that you've created in those management packs, they will continue to run. So you don't need to do anything. If you've made those, but if you've made form changes, you're going to have to install the authoring toolkit for 2016 or 2019 and reopen those old management packs and resave them. I have seen in some environments in the interpretation of the management pack when it opens in a new version of the authoring toolkit that the actual text box and the controls and so forth will lose some of their formatting, so they'll go all over the place. So once you open it in the latest version of the authoring toolkit, you will see whether or not it's healthy or not. You might have to make some changes to be able to click and drag things back to where it was. Yeah, so keep the questions coming. I'm just going to continue on with this really quickly because we're just about done here and just about out of time. But yeah, keep those questions coming. We can continue this afterwards. So I just wanted to highlight a bit of a checklist here that Joyvan was talking about there. Whilst the LMA application, you can just click everything and hit go. We advise that you do it in stages, and these stages and these checklists is to be able to do the management packs first, then those settings, runbooks, templates, those as a second run, config items, then work items, and then do your testing, and then run it again, the work item and configuration items to make sure that they're all up to date, and you're getting that working. Test again, and you can continue to run that test, update over time. And only when you're ready to actually cut over, you run that last final version of it, and away you go. What you can also do then is have a test environment. So building this as a production environment is one thing, but once you're up and running with your production environment, you want a test environment to be able to play with new management packs or new techniques or new learning that you've come across that you want to be able to play with and try out. Some of those might not work. Some of those might, take some extra fiddling about with to get it to work. In doing that, your dev test type environment doesn't stay in lockstep with your production environment. They start to diverge over time. So by running LMA from your production environment back to your test environment is a very quick way of bringing those management packs back, bringing your settings back as well, and even some of the test work items or configuration items that you bring over there. So great way of being able to blow away your test environment and rebuild it very, very quickly to make it resemble what you're actually doing in production there as well. So it'll really increase the accuracy of your testing in your dev environment as well. So we're just about out of time. So I did tease at the start about an exciting announcement at the end of this webinar, and that is that we're giving away a free 2-hour pre-migration assessment. So some of the questions that were coming out there about .NET versions and so forth, of management packs and so forth. We, for everyone here on the webinar here today, we're going to allow you to have that free 2-hour consultation with our services team here, whether that's myself or Joyvan or both of us, to be able to go over any of those sorts of questions, not just in general, but specifically about your environment. Okay, so this isn't just a general stuff that we can go over with this. If you've got a particular thing that you really want to drill down on and put some control around, we can absolutely do that. So Andrew Bennett, the territory manager here for Asia Pacific, he's going to reach out after this webinar to be able to schedule that appointment with each of you. Really do appreciate that. Before we do go though, I'm going to kick off one more poll, and that is who here is actually planning to migrate to 2019. Hopefully, that poll, I'm trying to see if everyone can see that. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, so if anyone can vote into there, we'll be able to organise. You know, it's interesting to see how many people are going to migrate and when they're looking to migrate to 2019. I'll leave this for another minute or so, and then we'll call it a day. And again, if you do have any other questions while we're going, please feel free to enter them into the questions area. What we got? 63% have voted. That'll do. Share the results of that. Yes, so fair bunch of you there wanting to sort of do it in the next 6 months, and 60% of you there not sure when you're actually going to look, you know, wanting to do it but not sure when. You know, we can use your 2 hours here of that free consulting time to sort of give you a much better idea as to the amount of effort it's going to take, sort of some of the benefits that you're going to get from it as well. So yeah, if you do have a bunch of questions that you want to get answered in that 2-hour session, please put them together. Reach out to Andrew Bennett, the territory manager here for APAC again, and we can schedule that appointment in and have a chat about your specific environment. So that's about it for everyone. Any other questions? If you do have any other questions, please throw them into the questions there of GoToWebinar. If not, if you don't have any other questions, thank you very much for joining us here today again for another webinar. Please have a look at our community.cireson.com, or go to cireson.com and look at the resources link for lots of other blogs and other previous webinars. To review this webinar, we're going to have this up on YouTube in the next day or two. Let us know if you've got any other questions that you think of after the fact. please feel free to contact either Andrew or myself, and we can get onto that for you. Thank you very much, Joyvan, for showing us the Lifecycle Management app and making yourself available today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brett.
Excellent. Doesn't seem to be any more questions coming in, so we'll call it a day. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Take care.